In this video, I'm going to show you the exact steps for setting up a gRPC server in Go, and later on I will go through these steps one by one by doing the actual coding. So the first step involves defining a service in a proto file. So in a .proto extension file, you have to define the service, and this service has APIs or RPCs of the service. Uh, so an example of the RPC is what we saw before. In case of high score, it is get high score or set high score. Or in case of game engine microservice, it can be get size or set score. So first you need to define the RPCs, which are basically like functions, and also the data types which are related to the RPCs. These are called messages in this context. So once you have defined this in the proto file, then you have to generate code using the proto compiler, and this code helps us setting this server and communicating with the server. And this code also has an interface that needs to be satisfied by implementation of the functions under that interface. Um, so in this case, in our case, the interfaces would be basically the functions which I showed you before, which are these four functions, and the interfaces will include these functions, and you'll have to implement these functions to satisfy that interface. So once you have generated the code, you have to actually implement the RPCs. For example, writing the actual logic of get size or set score or the other functions I showed you. And once that is done, then the server is ready to actually start to serve, which means it is up and running and it is waiting for any request to be made from any particular client. And the steps for actually starting to serve is you first need to get an address on which the server is supposed to listen on. Then you get a listener from the address. Then you register with the type that satisfied the interface by implementing the RPCs. So an interface, if a particular type implements the functions under the interface, then it basically satisfies that interface. So you have to register with that type, and then the last step would be to actually serve. So these are the overall steps, just so that you have at one single place you have all the information about what are the exact steps to set up a gRPC server. Later on, I'm going to go through each of these steps and basically perform these steps to actually start a gRPC server. So in our case, we'll have two servers eventually. The first one is of the high score microservice. This will be in the form of a gRPC server. Then the game engine microservice will also be in the form of a gRPC server.